Hi, this video is going to focus on the requirements for assignment number 1. Assignment number 1 is worth 15% of your final grade. It pertains specifically to lectures 1 and 2, but you'll also probably use some of the information you learned in your foundation course as well. That course is quite important for this course, as this course builds on that earlier foundations course. Question 1. This assignment is due on February the 3rd. Question 1. Identify which of the following are official records, transitory records, or non-records. I recommend doing this question, this response, as a table where you can have the record types, and then you can have, is this an official record? Is this a transitory record? And is this a non-record? So there are 8 options. This one is out of 8. Signed contract, an email confirming that you'll be attending a routine staff meeting, telephone message slip, signed copies of paper timesheets used to enter employee data into a payroll system, a share certificate for a company, an unfinished draft of a report saved to be worked on again the next day, a draft of a report submitted for review or approval, and finally a box of unused forms. Now, some of those aren't necessarily straightforward responses, straightforward record types. So in lectures 1 and 2, I talk about how to define the difference between an official record, a transitory record, and a non-record. So have a look at that. There are some examples given, and feel free in the discussion board to talk this out a little bit if you need to. Now, we will have a chat to talk about this assignment as well before the assignment is due. Question 2. Explain the difference between a record and a non-record. Give examples, and specifically examples not found in the lecture. This is out of 6, so 3 for each, a record and a non-record. In giving your description of what a record is, you want to also include transitory record. Question 3, describe the record's life cycle and explain how this is a useful concept for records managers, in particularly in how we manage records with the end users, the clients within your organization. How are you going to use that model, that records life cycle concept? That question is out of 10. So I usually do 5 for describing what the model is, or the life cycle theory is, and then 5 points for explaining how it's a useful concept for records managers. Question 4, what is a record series? Give an example of a typical record series that would be found in many organizations other than the examples used in the lecture. This is out of 6, so this is essentially 4 points for what is a record series. As part of that definition, you can also include the characteristics or what you might find in a record series as a means of defining it. And then give a typical example of a record series. So this relates to functions you'll find in every organization, and it's entirely up to you and the kinds of records you find in those functions. So every organization does something with banking and finances, HR, facilities, they're very common, right? So what kinds of records relate to those different functions that you'll find anywhere? Question 5, it's a scenario. So each assignment is going to have a scenario or a case study, and they're largely based on real life examples, either examples I've personally experienced as an information professional or experiences that are fairly common. Scenario for assignment 1, it's worth 20 points. You've been hired on contract with a charity organization that's never had a records manager on staff. Your first task is to create a retention schedule. What retention schedule type will you use? An organization or function-based? Why did you make that choice? In your discussion, include any references to operational or legislative requirements as appropriate. Provide examples of 5 record types of what the record series would look like in your retention schedule. Is a note here, you will need to look at privacy legislation or any other legislation that charity organizations must comply with in Canada and in Ontario. The response should be 1.5 pages, single-spaced, Times New Roman, 12-point font. You may include a chart. You may also include point form. In terms of assessment guidelines, creative thinking, your original ideas, content is worth 75% of the marks, but communication and how you write is worth roughly 25% of the mark. So spelling does count. Grammar does count. In working as an information professional within an organization, how you communicate is important. So it's important in this assignment as well. In the 20 marks that this scenario is based on, the retention schedule itself, it's worth 10 points. So 5 record types and a sort of model example of what your retention schedule will look like. So pretend it's a real retention schedule you're putting together. And then the explanation is worth the other 10%. Okay? You have lots of means to communicate with me. If you have any questions, we will have a chat focused on this assignment as well as the relevant lectures. You will have a discussion board, and you can always email me. Good luck.